there comes a moment in life when silence speaks louder than words, when actions reveal what words try to hide. And in that moment, you are faced with a choice: to stay and slowly lose yourself, or to walk away and protect your peace. People often listen to what is said, but they suffer because they ignore what is consistently shown. Words are easy. Words can be shaped, softened, and used to create an illusion. A person can promise loyalty while acting in ways that slowly break your trust. They can speak about respect while subtly crossing your boundaries again and again. And if you only focus on what they say, you will remain confused, holding on to hope that things will change. But truth does not live in words. Truth lives in patterns. A single action can be misunderstood. A bad day can cause someone to behave out of character. But when the same behavior repeats itself again and again, it stops being a coincidence. It becomes a reflection of who they truly are. Patterns are not accidents. Patterns are choices made over time. When someone repeatedly ignores your feelings, that is not forgetfulness. When they continue to speak to you in a way that feels disrespectful, that is not stress. When they make promises and fail to keep them, not once but many times, that is not bad luck. These repeated actions form a pattern, and that pattern carries a message that is far more honest than anything they could ever say. The difficulty is that the mind wants to protect the image it has created. It wants to believe the good moments are the real ones, and the painful moments are just temporary. So it begins to justify the behavior. You tell yourself they didn't mean it. You tell yourself they will change. You tell yourself to be more patient. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to ignore what is clearly in front of you. But patterns do not lie. They quietly repeat themselves until you are willing to see them. They show you how a person handles responsibility, how they treat your emotions, how much they value your presence. Not in one moment, but across many moments, and each repetition strengthens the truth. It is important to understand that recognizing a pattern requires honesty with yourself, not the kind of honesty that is influenced by emotion, but the kind that observes without attachment. You step back and ask, what is happening consistently? Not what I hope is happening, not what I wish to believe, but what is actually being shown over time. Because once you truly see the pattern, something changes inside you. The confusion begins to fade. The mixed signals start to make sense. And the emotional chaos settles into clarity. You no longer need to guess where you stand, because their actions have already answered that question. And in that clarity, you are faced with a deeper realization. You are not responding to isolated moments anymore. You are responding to a repeated reality that has been showing itself all along. Disrespect rarely arrives loudly at the beginning. It does not always come as open insults or obvious harm. Instead, it often appears in subtle ways, almost unnoticeable at first. A dismissive tone, a joke that feels slightly uncomfortable, a moment where your feelings are brushed aside as if they don't matter. And because these moments seem small, they are easy to ignore. But what is small at the beginning does not stay small. Disrespect grows when it is tolerated. When someone interrupts you repeatedly, speaks over you, or makes you feel unheard, it may seem like a minor issue. When they cancel plans without consideration, ignore your messages, or only show up when it is convenient for them, it may look like carelessness. But these actions carry a deeper message. They show how much value they place on your time, your presence, and your emotions. The mind often tries to justify this behavior. It creates reasons to soften the reality. You tell yourself they are busy. You tell yourself they are going through something. You tell yourself that maybe you are expecting too much. And in doing so, you slowly lower your own standards just to maintain the connection. This is where the danger begins, because every time you accept behavior that does not feel right, you are teaching the other person how to treat you. You are showing them that your boundaries are flexible, that your silence can be mistaken for acceptance. And over time, what was once occasional becomes normal. Disrespect is not always about what is said. It is about what is consistently allowed. When someone ignores your boundaries, they are not confused about them. They are aware. Especially if you have expressed how you feel, even in the smallest way. Repeatedly crossing those boundaries is a decision, not an accident. It reflects a lack of regard for your comfort and your well-being. There is also a deeper layer to this experience. Disrespect does not only come from others. It begins to shape how you see yourself. The more you accept it, the more you begin to question your own worth. You start wondering if you are overreacting. You begin to doubt your instincts. And slowly, your inner voice becomes quieter, replaced by uncertainty. But your discomfort is not random. It is a signal. It is your awareness recognizing that something is not aligned, that something is being taken from you without being acknowledged. And the longer you ignore that signal, the more disconnected you become from yourself. Respect is not something that needs to be demanded constantly. In healthy connections, it is present naturally. It shows in how someone listens, how they respond, how they consider your feelings, even in difficult moments. It does not require you to shrink, to stay silent, or to repeatedly remind someone of your worth. When that respect is missing, it reveals itself not in one moment, but in many, through consistent actions that slowly erode your sense of balance. And those actions, no matter how small they seem, carry a truth that should not be ignored. At first, staying feels harmless. You tell yourself you can handle it. You convince yourself that things are not that bad, that every relationship has difficulties, that maybe this is just a phase. And because you care, because you remember the good moments, you choose to stay a little longer. But time has a quiet way of revealing the cost of that decision. The longer you remain in an environment where you are not respected, not valued, or not understood, the more it begins to affect you from within. It does not happen all at once. It happens slowly, almost invisibly. Like a small crack in glass that spreads over time, your sense of self begins to weaken. You start adjusting yourself to keep the peace. You speak less about what bothers you because you already expect it to be dismissed. You hold back your thoughts, your emotions, your needs, just to avoid conflict or rejection. And in doing so, you begin to move away from your natural state. What once felt easy now feels heavy. You overthink simple conversations. You analyze every word, every reaction, trying to avoid triggering another moment of discomfort. Your mind becomes busy, constantly trying to predict what might go wrong. And this constant mental tension drains your energy, leaving you exhausted even in moments that should feel calm. At the same time, your confidence begins to fade. Not because you are weak, but because you are repeatedly placed in situations that make you question yourself. When your feelings are ignored, when your boundaries are crossed, when your presence is taken for granted, it creates a silent message inside you that maybe you are not enough. And if this continues, that message starts to feel real. You begin to doubt your instincts. You second guess your reactions. You wonder if you are asking for too much, if you are too sensitive, if you are the problem. This inner conflict pulls you further away from your clarity, replacing it with confusion. There is also a deeper loss that happens in this process. The loss of your identity. The person you were before, the one who felt certain, expressive, and grounded, starts to fade. In their place, a version of you appears that is more cautious, more quiet, more restricted, not because this is who you truly are, but because this is who you had to become to survive the situation. And the longer you stay, the more normal this begins to feel. You adapt to discomfort. You accept less than what you once knew you deserved. You stop expecting respect, consistency, or understanding, and instead, you learn to tolerate their absence. This adaptation is not strength. It is a form of slow surrender. Your energy, your peace, your sense of self, all of it is being gradually diminished. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, persistent way that is easy to overlook until the damage feels deep. And by the time you fully recognize what has been lost, you may find yourself disconnected from the very parts of you that once felt strong, clear, and alive. There is a quiet struggle that many people carry within themselves, a constant urge to explain, to prove, to justify their worth to someone who does not fully see it. It begins subtly. You try to communicate more clearly. You put extra effort into being understood. You give more time, more attention, more patience, believing that if you just do it better, they will finally recognize your value. But this effort slowly becomes a burden, because no matter how much you explain, it never feels enough. No matter how much you give, it is rarely returned in the same way. And instead of questioning the situation, you begin to question yourself. You start thinking that maybe you are not expressing yourself properly. Maybe you are lacking something. Maybe you need to become more to be worthy of their respect and care. This is where the illusion takes hold. You begin to believe that your value is something that must be earned in the eyes of another person. That if you can just find the right words, the right actions, the right version of yourself, you will finally be seen the way you want to be seen. And so you keep trying, you keep adjusting, you keep showing up, hoping that one day your effort will be acknowledged. But real worth does not work this way. Your value is not something that increases based on how much someone else understands you. It does not grow because someone finally decides to appreciate you. It is already there, complete and unchanged. The problem is not that you lack value, but that you are placing yourself in a space where that value is not recognized. And in that space, no amount of effort will change the outcome. When someone truly respects you, you do not feel the need to constantly explain yourself. You do not feel the pressure to convince them of your intentions, your feelings, or your importance. There is a natural understanding, a sense of ease in the connection. You are able to be yourself without the fear of being misunderstood or dismissed. But when that respect is missing, everything feels like work. Every conversation feels like an attempt to be heard. Every action feels like a step toward gaining approval. And over time, this constant effort becomes exhausting. You are no longer simply existing in the connection, you are performing within it. There is also a deeper cost to this pattern. The more you try to prove your worth, the more you move away from your own sense of self. Instead of standing firmly in who you are, you begin to shape yourself based on what you think will be accepted. You become more agreeable, more accommodating, more willing to overlook your own needs. And in doing so, you send a message not only to the other person, but to yourself, that your natural state is not enough. This is why the need to prove your worth is so dangerous. It does not bring you closer to being valued. It only keeps you trapped in a cycle where you are constantly seeking validation from someone who is not capable of giving it in the way you need. True recognition does not require effort of this kind. It does not demand that you shrink, adjust, or overextend yourself. It exists in spaces where you are already accepted as you are, without the need to convince anyone of your place or your importance. Walking away is often misunderstood. From the outside, it may look like giving up, like weakness, like an inability to handle difficulty. But in reality, it is one of the most disciplined and courageous actions a person can take. Because walking away requires you to go against your emotions, not follow them. There are moments when your heart wants to stay. It remembers the good times, the connection, the hope that things might return to what they once were. It tells you to be patient, to try one more time, to hold on just a little longer. And in those moments, leaving feels painful, almost unnatural. But strength is not always about holding on. Sometimes strength is the ability to let go when everything inside you wants to stay. Walking away means choosing your peace over your attachment. It means recognizing that your well-being matters more than temporary comfort. It is a decision made not in anger but in clarity, a quiet understanding that